All right, let's see. Are we up and running? And if we are successful, we'll go through our intro. Hey, it looks like we are up and running. Let's check our mic. Mic check, mic check. Intro. Yeah, it sounds fantastic. Okay, great. Hey, we're getting up and running here, folks. Let me grab the link here for me to drop on the socials. I'm on the X Twitter platform at Phil Kearney. If you're still on the X Twitter platform, feel free to catch up with me there. My name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, I publish them online, and I have been using Eberron as my D&D homebrew setting for pretty much since it came out in the mid-2000s. I've used it in Cypher System, 3rd edition, 5th edition. I did not ever run 4th edition. But it is by far my favorite default setting. It has so much variety and interesting stuff going on in it. So we're writing an adventure in the Eberron setting. It's called Crystals of Mabar. You can see it here on screen. It's for characters levels 7 and 8, 4 to 5 of them. You could have you could go into the final dungeon as a one-shot, and we provide options to do so. Otherwise, you can start all the way out to the very first part of the first act at the very beginning of the adventure, and if you do absolutely everything, including all the optional encounters that we're now adding in, you could probably clock in around 60 hours of gameplay with it. So, yeah, so it takes place in a manifest zone in the Carnwood Forest in the nation of Karnath. Karn. And so this is an undead sinkhole that we are illustrating. That'll be transitioning into color, into a color map piece once we're content with the line art. And this is a lot cleaner than the initial version, but it's still super sketch. And that's normally okay to have it sketched like that in the color portion, because I'm just going to blend the line art into the color anyway. Well, that would be, well, hold on. That would be true with a normal illustration, but when I'm doing cartography like this, I tend to not blend line art in. The line art is generally structural, but here we're using it more illustrative. So I don't think that's necessarily true. But yeah, Undead Sinkhole. This is at the Undead Research Facility here. There's plenty of mass graves that are unlabeled. They were probably documented at different locations at some point by somebody. But they've been long since forgotten and overtaken by the forest, the Carnwood, as the necromancy facility was built to explore undead, and eventually they found a way to artificially create a manifest zone to the plane of Mabar where undeath gets fueled. And so the story here is that by permanizing a manifest zone, not only will you automatically raise any undead that anybody dead there automatically rises as a zombie. So it's super affordable to be able to do undead stuff there, like building undead and seeing if their corpses will animate once they're bound together and stuff like that. So it's a super creepy place, and it does everything that a necromancer would want it to do. So permanizing a Mabar manifest zone is good news if you want to do necromancy stuff. It also terraforms the environment that is coterminated with the manifest zone. Cotermination means that the like one plane overlaps and coexists with another plane. It's a Keith Baker term, and so the longer a manifest zone coterminates with another plane, or rather, the longer that a manifest zone is present, the more the invading plane affects the environment of the hosting plane. So Eberron is the hosting plane in the Carnwood in the nation of Karnath on Corvair. The invading plane is Mabar. So Mabar is terraforming the Carnwood, and since it's the plane of undeath, it's just rotting all of the organic material, which would be logical for a plane of undeath to do that. The thing is that it has its own form of flora and fauna, so it drains all the life from the soil and turns it basically into coffee grinds, and from those coffee grinds grow different Mabar plants like iridescent mushrooms and spongy moss. These little black dandelions and the other iridescent fungus that releases a stink cloud, like the spell stink cloud. It releases a spore effect that is similar to that to sicken anybody that's in its space. So it creates some nastiness that are fun natural hazards. Oh yeah, and then the razor wire. Any bones that are left untended in the manifest zone sprout from the marrow. Basically like tarns of iron hard vines with thistles. So it becomes slashing damage that you can drop into a terrain environment. So I'm going to be making little tokens for these different plants. We already did some illustrations for them for a more up close look at them, but we also have the tokens. So when we illustrate them in the book, we'll have the actual flora illustration as well as the token next to it, so you can identify those things, and then we'll include that in the toolkit. So if you want to build maps like this, you'll have all of the tools to do so. I feel pretty good about this. I think I'm being a little nitpicky at this point. I could probably move on to the next section of the map. So I'm here 10 times per week, Monday through Friday in the morning like this. We're doing this token cartography stuff. On Tuesday, Wednesday, and Fridays, I'm working on Spelljammer content. I've been working on there's two it's like side projects like Martial Powers is being play tested right now on Saturday mornings. So normally if I have updates, I'll do them on Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday. The Warforged and Machine supplement for Spelljammer that we've started, we work on that on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Whatever side project I'm working on. That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. And then on Mondays and Thursday nights, I work on the Vocath Mega Ship, which is a 500-foot Spelljammer ship from Linus Araxis. If you know Linus Araxis, you know what Vocath's base is. So we're making Vocath's base into a giant crab that you can fight the elves when they show up and start bullying people. The way to be a little bit more proactive in the campaign. Hey Thornton, how you doing? Yeah, I'm on a little bit of a ramble mode this morning, so enjoy. I've been DMing for about 36 years now. It's 36 years this week. That's right, it's my birthday week, and I got my first D&D box set when I was 12. So, old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you. And instantly fell in love with it. I had already been watching the D&D cartoon when I was a 5 and 6 year old. God, that cartoon was in syndication for like 4 years, something like that. And and so once I picked up the box set, I was also starting to get interested in drawing, and Lord of the Rings was cool. So I was starting to bend in that fantasy genre. I just discovered heavy metal. You know, like all these, I was heading in that path, that Eddie path. But there, that is for you. What's up? Hope there's no demons at the bottom of the sinkhole. There is. There's a living grave down there. Which one? What? Let's see. Sinkhole, chamber, vocath, monster tokens. Here we go. Living graves. Yeah, I was talking about this yesterday. If you want to check the previous episode, you can. But this is a living grave. It's a necromantic concoction animated by the manifest zone of Mabar, where these things are spawning. Basically, a mass grave where all the bodies are kind of fused together with the Mabaran soil that's seeping in, and then the sludge of the water that's flooded. It was initially a chamber, like a steel box that they just dumped shitloads of corpses into, so that they'd be able to dig them up and then haul them off someday if they needed them. But they were forgotten about, unlabeled. They were undocumented at each location, so there could be any number of these in the manifest zone during the adventure to crop up to harass the players with while they're marching through the mush. But so the mass grave animates, and since it's just a jarble of corpses, and they always sit in water. So there's no real telling how many corpses are underneath the slick, slimy layer of atop the water. So you have plausible deniability that at any time you can just turn on the spigot and keep having undead rise up out of this muck and go attack people. And if the team goes in and destroys the mass grave, they destroy it. Then like in Gauntlet, the video game. You effectively destroy the monster generator, and it won't spawn any more undead at you. So depending on how much your team likes doing mass combat, has AoE effects, how the campaign is being approached, you can sprinkle in a sinkhole grave like this pretty much anywhere you want inside of the manifest zone or in the surrounding forest around it. And, we're really paying attention to, like, when are you in exploration mode, when are you in combat mode, when are you disarming all of your dice in a social encounter. And I think I want to have that like that a little bit more. Hold on. So having dials that allow you to turn up or turn down the amount of violence in the game is an option that's there for the DM. You can run this entire adventure without a single attack if you wanted to. Like, you could act like Scooby-Doo throughout the entire adventure, finding ways to social or explore your way through different challenges. If you're creative in creating allies and looking at means to like circumnavigate threats or outsmart opponents, there's plenty of options for that throughout the adventure, which I love. I love having a broad mix. Like, I love assuming that you could somehow convince virtually any creature that you run across in the game, as long as you can communicate with them, that they have some sort of a goal that they all want to achieve, that if your team can tap into, you can negate combat pretty much altogether, which is classic kid fantasy trope, where you're mostly engaging with mostly non-hostile creatures, except all the undead is hostile, but all the NPCs, for the most, not all of them, until you get to the very, very end. Most of the NPCs that you run across are more than willing to negotiate or somehow cooperate with the players while they're attempting to shut this place down. Most people are not happy with undead spontaneously rising from where they fell, and not having anyone controlling them. That is a universal bad. So there's a lot of folks that are willing to get on board with you if you seem to have solutions that you're willing to offer, because that's some scary shit. So everything inside of the adventure is attempting to frame realistic responses from a society that has had up-close work with necromancy for extended periods of time, that's trying to get away from that sort of relationship with nature. So now that the war is over, they can attempt to restore to a more natural balance in their nation, which is why they outlawed the Emerald Claw.
which is why there's so many disenfranchised Emerald Claw members now that were used to a certain lifestyle and aristocracy respect. Once you rose up in the military high enough, you basically gained status in society, and the Emerald Claw was a fast, easy path for you to fast track an officer career. But now that they're illegal, they're all trying to figure out how are they supposed to maintain this lifestyle that they've become accustomed to and this amount of power that they're used to wielding. These are all potential war criminals that need to be put down by just seeking adventurers, perhaps, in a campaign that was involved with that. But this is a good entry point for that kind of a campaign. So Emerald Claw is who's running this organization right now. They made a deal with the 12, which is a super secret evil wizard organization that now the military is no longer an option. Joining a supervillain league is the next obvious answer, but Emerald Claw are their penchant for undead energy or black magic, as it were, using Magic the Gathering color wheel. These black mana wielders are by nature ambitious, and they'll stab you in the back if they see an opportunity to improve the efficiencies or their own personal power within an organization. They will take you out. So the 12 is leery of them, but the offer of manifesting and permanizing a manifest zone to Mabar is a very tempting business proposition, because all the stuff that like the soil can be used as material components from necromancy spells and in rituals, and all the different plants have alchemical properties that can be manipulated to create potions and stuff. So there's a high market value for this place if it can be maintained. So they knew where the location was at. There's a bunch of refugees from Sire and a bunch of displaced soldiers retiring from Karnath's military that, swords to plowshares. They're setting up farmland, because after a large world war, what do you need? You need food for reproduction. So anyone that's willing to go out and homestead a new farm in the unused reaches of Karnath, no one's going to ask, who are you, as long as you're bringing things to the market to sell. So this is a good place for Sire refugees to kind of forget about who they were, and for soldiers that never had a home, really, or that their home was destroyed decades ago, to start over again in peace. So neat stuff going on there, but as a result of it, a lot of these undocumented farms are susceptible to bandits. So they have a sort of they're trying to reach out to the constables that have authority in Karnath, but they're so overworked. The halfling menace in the Talenta Plains has become so much that it's its own Wild West campaign right now, and it's sapping most of the resources for deputies and sheriffs to go pursue refugees that don't want to be documented, having problems with locals. So that's just job loading to the sheriffs. So the default assumption going into the adventure is your characters are hired and deputized to go deal with whatever frontier bullshit it is that they have going on, but they're all settled along the Carnwood, which is a known place that is haunted. So it's like, you guys really want to go hang out by the haunted forest? It's like, it's open territory. It's like, okay, well, if things turn sideways, don't be surprised, and then things go sideways and no one is surprised. So, but there's people going missing, there's weirdness happening, there's undead being seen in fields occasionally, there's been some deaths. So they need help, and the constable's like, fucking fine, whatever. So they deputize your team. You have the right then to go out there and question anybody and everybody, and if you can make deals about not snooping on people, they'll be open to house you, give you a place. One of the plot hooks has it that your family's settled there, and they've been trying to get you to retire from this adventuring life and start an honest life as a farmer. So it becomes like a crash house if you want to take them up on that. There's also a bunch of alternate adventure plots for the adventure, like the Druid Circle of the Gatekeepers are aware that this is an unnatural manifest zone to a plane of vast evil. So they want to send, they'll basically plane shift your team in as a kill squad to destroy whatever it is that's generating this and kill anyone who knows anything about it. And then they give you a seal. They give you a seal, a gate seal, which is a magical pebble that when you flick it at something, it becomes a 2-ton rock that drops into the nexus of the manifest zone with all these planar sigils inscribed onto it that activates when it hits a manifest zone. When you activate it inside of a manifest zone. So you're sent there to basically to stopper the planar rift and kill anyone who created it. So that's like a murder hobo type objective. Like if your team likes to do murder hobo shit, here, go kill a bunch of undead and cultists. It's perfect. Like that's great murder hobo content. There's also like you're hired by the 12 to go reclaim control of the facility. The guy Solzu who's running the show, he's cut off communication with the 12, so he's starting to welch on his deal. So you're sent in to clean it up, replace him, shut the place down, get it under control, so that when they send in a fixer, it'll be a secure environment for them to assess what the next best step is. Now that the Emerald Claw goes sideways. And one of the members, Karen the Enchantress, she's a bitch. She's purposefully sabotaging the ritual so that when it kills Solzu, who's running the ritual right now, when it kills him, she can take control and then bend the knee to the 12. Solzu was legitimately attempting to gain his own rank of power. She's willing to do the lackey role and work her way up through the ranks a little more methodically than what Solzu is. But she didn't have the same sort of rank that Solzu had in the Karnath military. He was military intelligence, so he knew a lot of shit. And so he was not happy about dropping down in power. So this was, he was able to, the brokerage secrets he knew about Karnath to be able to get into audience with the 12. This is just background information. It's not actually relevant to the adventure, but it's stuff that I think about. So, like, I don't give you I don't add a page of information about Solzu, having secrets and dividing power and stuff like that. It's a little more. It's as concise as we can get it when it's relevant inside the adventure. But I'm just lore dumping because I've been thinking about that. Like I had 3 DMs running this thing. I've ran it. I ran the adventure 5 times. So I've been involved with it for quite some time, and it gives you an opportunity to think about it. But it was designed for DM services to have, and like if they got into this, you can replay it multiple times in different ways. So for a DM. It runs so many different ways, it's hard to get bored of it. It depends, like, does your team lean into combat or exploration or social stuff? There's 6 different plot hooks that all have different objectives like that. So you can roll a 6-sided die for each person that's playing to determine what their individual objective is, and they can decide to share or keep it secret from the other players at the table if that's the kind of a game you want to host. Or everyone can roll a d6 collectively and be a team that represents that goal, and so everyone's working towards that objective together. Or the DM can just, and that's great for one-shots. The best long-term campaign that's built into it is the sheriff route, because if you defeat this place, obviously there's trouble, and they need constables in the area. So your team gets approved to be permanized deputies. And then you can start you begin having influence and domain over the area, and you can use the abandoned necromancy facility as a base of operations if you want to start setting up domain play. There's access points to the Underdark underneath it, so if you want to use it a launching point for like a modified Out of the Abyss campaign or do your own Kyber exploration campaign, it's set up to do that. So a lot of really, really great resources there. That was really fun building into a toolkit, basically, for DMs to have an undead theme in the Carnwood if you're looking for one. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm going to hit save here, and let's skip up to and start working on the next piece. We want to use 4 points for, we use a 4-point brush for hitbox, basically, in a first-person shooter game or whatever. In video games, you define the navigatable space as a hitbox. So what we're doing is we're establishing the terrain that can be traversed inside of this box. It's buried in soil, so you can't just walk off. You can't just walk out of the room. There's nowhere to go other than up. So we are building the hitbox where the characters can navigate inside of, and then we'll add in with a smaller brush size more details and character elements. Points of interest. Let's see. It's going to be profile. Put a lock on that. Inside. And we drop down to 3-point font. I'm going to start working on some structural detailing. The intent is for this to just basically look like debris. This is a buckled door that at one point, if it wasn't completely compromised, if it was exhumed, they would be able to open up these doors here. So the roof of this is also iron, and it's just rusted out, and the ghouls that are generated inside here are able to claw their way out through the compromised metal to start running amok along the surface, which is how your team finds out about the sinkhole. There's a thick miasmic fog that is a humid. It's fog. It's humid. It's cold and damp. And it naturally collects on surfaces over time, and like the condensation when it dries, it forms crystals like the dirt that gets basically drained of any kind of essence becomes this coffee crystal grit. And that same grit just naturally forms on anything that remains steeped in the fog long enough. So it's just everywhere. This crystal grit is everywhere, which we'll be depicting here. But it breaks down metal. It rots living tissue. It gets stuck to the wet point, like the soft tissue on your body, like around your eyes and in your nostrils and on your lips. So everything gets real grimy really quick. There's a lot of if you spend any time of it, you're gonna spend words. If you go marching around in this grit, you're going to spend your short rest cleaning it out with a brush from your armor. there's no specific mechanics about like breaking your armor down in this stuff. It's a little slower than that, but the grittiness is it's a fun narrative element. Like you get wounded, the stuff gets into your wounds and it just festers. Yeah. That feels good. So tonight when we come back, this evening, we'll continue working on the Spelljammer Mega Crab for Vokath's private base. And we're getting close to having that. It's a 500-foot battle crab construct ship. And we are close to done with it. So I think we'll get the last of the structural stuff done tonight, and we'll start furnishing the rooms. That shouldn't take too long, honestly. But once we finish doing that, then we'll colorize the different spaces, and then we can start working on the fleet battle that the battle crab will tank for. So there's the allied. If you don't know Allied Azaraxis, this won't make any sense, but there's a fleet that the team gathers to fight the main bad guys, and there was no fleet combat mechanics really provided by Wizards of the Coast, so we built some. They work great. They work great, and it's a fun. Now that you have, and by adding fleet combat to Spelljammer, it makes the last couple encounters of that adventure a lot more fun. Like if you like doing combat stuff, if you think that stuff is fun, then this really ramps up that fun level for you. Because ship combat's awesome. But it's not something that many people... It's not something that's readily available for 5th edition. You have to really go look for it. So I was really proud to put that on the DMsGuild. I might have to calm that down a bit. Yeah. Nope. Nope. Yeah, that feels better. Here.
There we go. That feels much better. And then the living grave just gets dropped here in this 2x2 space. There we go. Put a lock on that. Drop down here. 7-11. Let's take a sip. Keep the whistle wet. And take a sip of coffee for the wakefulness. Good times. The corpse goes, the grave goes here, which lines up here. It can slowly slough about, but it can't climb. It just spawns dead. That's just all it's really designed to do. Have that flotilla. So we're gonna have water flooded around here, and then we'll use the coloring of the water here to drop down here to tint everything below this water line here. Thank you, Timely Timer. I have a 20-minute timer. It helps me make sure I don't get trapped up in any kind of tangents or hyper OCD into a specific space. But so we have the water line here. When we get to that point, when we finish up the line art, we'll go back into the cemetery. Here, I'll show you. Since we have the cemetery map anyway. There you go. I was showing this off yesterday, but this is our 50-inch cemetery map. So we'll be able to we'll be grabbing this same sort of oily water effect here, and here's the grit that's all throughout the soil, and all the graves are of course empty because all of the skeletons animated. Here's the cobblestone that's breaking up, so we'll use the same cobblestone color in the map that we're using. This is the water effect that we're going with. This is the stone. Sorry, that's an interior stone. Let's go down to the wall out here. This is the wall formatting that we use for the top of the stone structures, and all the grit. So we have all this language resolved already for how to express these maps, and it's been a consistent look throughout. So we'll be able to import the same stylized look into this map as well. And then where is it? Act 2, Region 2, black and white. There you go. And here's the black and white version of it. And we have it broken up into 10 by 15 inch spaces. So on legal pages, you can print it out. It's 20 I think it's 20 pages of legal size. Like if you wanted to print up this entire 54, I think it's 54 inches, 54 by 54 inches that are displayed here. You can peel that. You can break that apart into like we'll have. I'll just be carving it up into 10 by 15 inch blocks that you can then again feed through a printer like a laser printer. Super cheap to do it. You just need the 11 by 16 legal sheet size to then feed it through and to be able to print out on your tabletop. Assuming that you aren't going to pay for 50 inches worth of high color resolution map, so make it easy for folks to print them out and muck them up. That was some word salad. Don't mind me. I'm getting used to wording. So I want to have like a rusted dirt clump sort of feeling to this place. No, it's going to be all covered with crystals and mushrooms and fungus. So the first thing we're doing is the structural stuff, and then we're going to come back and add in the flora, like the mushrooms and the moss, and then we'll colorize it. There we go. I like this. This is feeling pretty good. It's really meditative just to do line art. It's relaxing. It's I've been a freelance illustrator for about 25 years at this point. Off and on, nothing major. Just a bunch of third-party indie books. And but the point is that I've been started taking D&D art, like quote unquote, seriously when I was 12. The same year I became a DM. I started learning the game. It's like, yeah, I want to get good at art. That was the same time. That was the same year where I started taking art seriously. And but I was doing like helicopters, tanks, and fighter jets and spaceships since I was 5.
So I've always had a high interest in visual arts, and I was a big Lego fan when I was growing up. Constantly playing with Legos, building things and castles and siege machines and dungeons and stuff. Before I even started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I was making like caverns and stuff, and aircraft carriers and jets to fly them off of. Probably could have gotten a gig as an Imagineer if I had wanted to. That was not my path, but I loved figuring out architectural and engineering stuff with Legos. Like, absolutely loved figuring those things out. And that kind of flowed into CAD design in high school, and which taught me about like three-dimensional like schematics and how to represent three-dimensional objects in 2 dimensions from different perspectives. And so I got to do that. I got to do that as a class for like 4 months. That was fun. But it really set me up to be able to be critical about that sort of stuff. And I've always had a decent sense of spatial. What's the word I'm looking for? Modeling, I guess. Spatial modeling. Anyway, I feel like I'm making up words right now. But all that stuff just kind of like, all the things that you love to do, all the little interests, all kind of percolate and diffuse into the kind of a DM that you are. Like, I love architectural stuff and engineering, and I also like geopolitics a lot. So I naturally lean really hard into exploration and investigative sort of adventuring. So that's how I present most of the campaigns that I run to my players. It's from that exploration first, and like, explore first, shoot later, if at all. Like 70% of my adventures are exploration, unless I'm specifically modifying the style of the game to accommodate the players at the table of the campaign. But I also treat character interactions as exploration, like the deceive, intuit, persuasion, intimidation, and investigation and perception all kind of work together during a conversation. You can use any of those six different skill proficiencies with charisma, intelligence, wisdom, to kind of have those things work together during a conversation, to be able to like know that they're holding something back, or feel, or you can tell like how much aggression goes into the description of this person, or like neat little tidbits like that, because players love rolling dice when they're doing social conversations, because they think it makes a difference on how the outcome of the conversation is going to go. And I agree with that, kind of. Like, I'm the sort of DM that agrees that the social skill proficiencies can't modify what they'll do; they modify how they do it. Like, between friendly, neutral, and hostile, the ability checks that you're rolling there for intimidation, persuasion, deception, those are modifying their disposition from in one direction or another, neutral, hostile, friendly. And it's the other skills, the investigation, perception, and intuit, that you use during the conversation to harvest information like you're searching a desk, you're searching the conversation. So you can layer in deception and persuasion and intuit and investigate all these things together during the course of a conversation. If you really want to grind it down, you can turn a conversation into a dungeon, where each room is a different topic of conversation, and a hallway is like a segue into a new conversation piece. So you can navigate this conversation dungeon and identifying traps and potentially combating different logic traps. Like logic traps will obviously be traps, but like accusations could be attacks. And so you can fight things, you can hunt things, you can explore things, you can avoid or lay traps against your opponent as you're going through this conversational labyrinth. It's a work in progress as a narrative device, but I've been very, very hyper aware lately of like the 3 gears that most role-playing games operate in, and it's very evident with Dungeons and Dragons, which is why I love 5th edition so much. But among the 3 pillars, there's deep mechanics at combat, where you're parsing action economy. There's exploration challenges, which are basically like skill challenges, which is just a single die roll moves you forward, but you're not expending any sort of resources. You're just making called shots. And then there's the social pillar, which is put the dice away because we're doing interaction stuff right now. But at any point, you can pick up the dice and be making any conversation becomes information gathering. It becomes an exploration challenge. The moment you become interested in what they say. So I would say the social pillar is actually role-playing development, where you're specifically investing time narrating things about your character or their past in an effort to deepen your character immersion or to increase the amount of fiction inside of your adventure. And I personally as a DM don't support it. I open up opportunities for people to engage in that sort of content, but as a DM, I don't feel that character depth is my responsibility. And I've talked about this a lot in the past, but I would rather you have a vague idea about your being an orphan and your parents missing and you wanting to find them, and instead of the DM having to work to figure out how can you work your lost dad into the adventure, is have the player call out where they think their dad is at, or like maybe this villain is actually their dad. Like, I like characters having that sort of narrative power because they're using their character, they're improvising their character's background to fuel a reason for them to have a certain social or combat interaction. So by creating this parameter of I need to have all of these different ingredients cooked into the adventure, you're actually stifling the DM's ability to cook. I don't know if anyone's seen. It's called Wild Card Kitchen. It's a Food Network thing. I catch it on HBO or Max streaming services. But basically, they have a deck of cards. They'll randomly choose from the deck what you're cooking, and then another deck is how long you have to cook it. And then one of the wild cards is an ingredient that you have to include with a dish, which could be difficult to achieve. Like noodles with ice cream, for instance. Like, your dish is ice cream, you must now include noodles with it. It's like, how the fuck am I supposed to make an interesting, pleasing dish with that sort of a rule involved with it? That's, every time a player says, this is a background element for my character and I want it integrated into the story somehow. If you make it the DM's burden, they now have to make ice cream with noodles. They're your noodles. I'm making ice cream. You figure out where those noodles belong in your ice cream dish, and I will let you do it, and I will help you move through that effect. But this is your responsibility. This is your part of the world building that you can take off the shoulders of the DM if the DM is into this sort of a gameplay. I am, because I know how much it takes off of the burden for me as a DM to be able to create something. So obviously I encourage it. I'm talking about it. But for DMs that feel it's intimidating to not only build the adventure but to figure out how to pay attention to each character's own personality and background while they're doing it, that's not your job. That was never your job. That's a 5th edition job that didn't exist until now. It existed in 2nd edition and AD&D. Not really. It wasn't much of a presence in BECME at all. It didn't really become a thing until Dragonlance, when they started writing adventures as like an extended storyline that builds on top of each other, that assumes success in a certain sort of success with certain plot beats occurring during the adventure to set you up for the next adventure. Like that was in 2nd edition. That was a more organized means of structuring, like it was actually integrating plot points into moving the story forward, as opposed to just being a dynamic dungeon environment where there's characters inside of it that are attempting to achieve goals that your players being present is automatically going to interfere with, thus creating the conflict of the situation. You being there, you should not be here, you're now being perceived as a threat. That's basically how every D&D adventure worked until Dragonlance. Like, here's what's going on, here's what people are trying to achieve, now your characters are here and fucking everything up. Proceed. Like, that's adventuring. You just got inserted into an existing scenario and scrubbed it, and however much of the information you gathered about it was strictly on you, but you're mostly there just to steal the loot, right? Because you don't get experience points unless you walk out with gold. So your goal as a player is to accumulate wealth so that you can spend it for experience points or new magic items. Like, that was the deal. But once you started inserting plot points and a presumed ongoing narrative, then you start having the opportunity to build personalities of your characters around it as a static member, as a static fixture in the telling of that adventure's story. That starts setting up those are the first steps towards narrative-driven adventuring, as opposed to procedurally generated. Big difference in philosophy. It affects everything about the game, how you build your character. Like when WotC took over, Dungeon Punk became a thing because they made D&D into a deck building game by stacking multi-class and prestige classes to build characters with specific action loop sequences inside of their round of combat to defeat enemies. They effectively made Magic the Gathering a PvE deck building game with a narrative element on top of it. It's genius. It's fucking genius. They leaned out of it and completely away from it in 4th edition in the attempt to make an MMO style analog simulator, which they successfully did, by the way. They succeeded at the goal, except that the analog DMing, it was a lot more static than earlier editions of the game. So in 5th edition, they removed that depth of interior control and went back to the more gonzo style of 1st edition, where there's intended imbalance between martials and wizards, but the balance had been taken out, and a lot of the deck building aspect of 3rd edition, most of it remained absent, but with subclasses, some of it was reintroduced. But it doesn't have, with multi-classing as it is with subclasses, you have some deck building capability, but it's nothing compared to what it had been in 3rd edition. So you really have to be on board deck building to enjoy, to really, like that's like a mini game inside of 3rd edition of building the most preposterous deck that you can and just running it. So you had to have a DM that was comfortable with running shenanigan decks And that's where we spent almost all of our time in 3rd edition, is figuring out how to DM these shenanigan deck builds, to change our mentality about what is good gaming. Because if you can build, Pun can warp your game. So how can you build a game that's narratively driven with interesting challenges that are adaptable enough to deal with these different deck challenges? So that was the objective, like the literal objective of the table that I was at. There was anywhere from 3 to 5 of us at any time, and there was 3 of us that were DMing our group fairly regularly at epic levels of like up to level 25, I think, is as far as we got. We were planning for 28, and I think life ended up changing. I moved away from that team before we got past level 25. I've got a lot of mush structure here, so I want to add a little bit of a little framework like clay brick, a little more. Not a lot, just some formalized structure stuff going on. No, that wouldn't be there. I was about to put a tile on top, but the tile would be on the bottom underwater, because it would have caved in, and then subsequently had a bunch of muck just kind of pour in over time. But this is largely just a pile of mud. Like really gritty, gross mud. Where are we at? 7:37. Okay. So we got 15 minutes left. 37, 47, 52. That's good. So I still got 20 minutes left. I want this to look less it's looking too brainy, which means there's too much lump going on. So I need to thin that down a bit. So I can use slick, glistening, viscous surface textures when I actually colorize everything. I don't think colorize is. Colorize might be a word. It's feeling pretty good. There we go. That feels pretty good. That feels pretty good. There we go. Nice.
Okay, cool. I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, some little offshore blurbles. Let's do that over here instead. Merge that down into one layer. Get some mud splashed in there.
So we're gonna have some fun when we start doing the water.
That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool. That sits pretty. That's good. I'm gonna relock that. I think I'm content with this for now. So inside, I'll put a lock on that, and then top side. All right, this is the next piece. It's 750. You know what? Honestly, I think this is enough traction for now. We've made some good progress. When we come back tomorrow, this isn't working right. There we go. Yeah, so that's good. That's good. When we come back tomorrow, we'll work on this this section here, and then from there. From there, we can begin colorization. So, I'll take some of this. We'll start building fungus and little shroom colonies out here, and then we'll import those into the interior here and here. And that'll help us establish the tokens, the glowing fungus, the black moss, the mushrooms, and the razor wire. We'll be able to establish tokens for all of those. Yeah, there you go. So, all right, that's it for now. I will see everyone tonight in about 11, maybe 11-ish hours. I'll be back on working on the Spelljammer Vocap's Mega Crab. We'll work on that later on tonight. And in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great day. I'll catch you later. Thanks a lot.